Welcome to Shannon's Club TV. If you're a motoring enthusiast, you might be familiar with the road and race histories by Joe Kenwright and myself on the Shannon's Club website.
We're bringing those histories to life here on the show with rare footage and photographs and some fantastic stories from Australian roads and racetracks. We'll also take a road trip with a proud owner of our feature car and take a look at what made it stand out.
Right now, the car that made tough V8 motoring accessible to everyday Australians, the Studebaker Lark.
What happens when your groundbreaking new big car range cannot match the excess of rivals in an era when too much was never enough? The trim, slick new Studebakers, first seen in 1953, not only inspired new models globally, they won national design awards. By 1957, Studebaker had reached the limit on how much their sleek, landmark design could carry in extra chrome and growing fins. It was either start again with an even bigger and excessive variation of what Detroit was already building, or use the amazing 1953 starting point to create something new and different. The result was the Lark Compact, first seen late in 1958. Studebaker cut the ends off its big car range, shortened the wheelbase and retooled the chassis in heavier section steel for a 30% boost in stiffness. Capped by styling which linked the front with the sporty Hawk Coupe, it looked classy and distinctive for a budget car. The new Studebaker Lark was even shorter than a Holden despite a longer wheelbase. A true compact in the parking lot, it was still a big car underneath, tipping the scales at a massive 1,600 kilograms. Ford's 1962 compact Fairlane was much bigger but only weighed around 1,300 kilos. Mark, how could you seriously consider a Studebaker Lark for competition? What was the process that prompted their ongoing entries in several of Australia's toughest races?
Well, it was big, it was tough. You know, the Police Highway Patrol loved it because it had a powerful V8 engine. Now you combine that with a track like Mount Panorama with those massive long straights. To those early competitors, it would have seemed like it was custom made for that track. The only problem is, you get a 1.6 tonne car that's going very fast down Conrod, you have to stop it at the end. And that presented a new set of challenges, which I'll get to a bit later on.
The Lark couldn't have been better suited to local needs for the very reasons that Mark mentioned. The extra width, long overhangs and low clearance of the latest US cars made them vulnerable on rough bush roads, which could leave occupants stranded a long way from home. The Lark, with its higher ground clearance, short overhangs, toughness and space, with a bonus of a strong V8 engine, arrived just as Ford stopped building its popular local custom line. The first imported Larks cost the price of two Holdens. By late 1960, a new locally built Lark slashed the price by over 40%, or the price of just one Holden plus a modest premium. It quickly became the car of choice for budget V8 buyers, ideal for towing a big van or a wooden boat of the era. In 1961, Studebaker slipped the long wheelbase cruiser onto the market as the automatic version. By 1962, all local Lark sedans shared this extra wheelbase, defining a popular new mid-size segment between Australian family cars and the larger Yank tanks. The earlier and lighter short wheelbase manual sedans found a steady market as a police car. From 1962, Studebaker offered a lighter short wheelbase two-door for pursuit work and a bigger four-door for wider duties. Just as Studebaker was enjoying strong sales in Australia, the December 1963 closure of the US factory spooked the market. Although new Canadian models kept local sales alive, the last two local Studebaker cruiser examples took until 1968 to clear as orders and confidence evaporated after March 4, 1966, the day when Canadian production ended. So Mark, the Studebaker Lark's survival started and ended as a battle against the odds. Yet the Lark competition history in Australia had no parallel anywhere else in the world.
That's right. And it all started at a crumbling little racetrack in Phillip Island. Still to come, we'll meet a proud Studebaker Lark enthusiast and we get the latest updates from the Shannon's auction team with Hammer Time. The Studebaker Lark boasts a colourful motorsport heritage in Australia unmatched by any other model in the Studebaker stable. Built around the annual 500-mile or 800-kilometre race for stock standard production cars held at Victoria's Phillip Island circuit and later at Mount Panorama Bathurst. Studebaker Larks competed in the Great Race for most of the 1960s, commencing in 1961 and maintaining an unbroken string of appearances until 1968. And even though they came close on occasions, the Larks never cracked it for an outright win. With its powerful V8 engine, the heavyweight American sedan was not only a favourite with local highway patrol officers. The Lark was also the fastest thing down Conrod Straight at Bathurst for many years, reaching top speeds approaching 200 kilometres an hour, which was considered supercar performance at the time. However, it should not be forgotten that the annual 500-mile race was conceived primarily to test the durability of the latest showroom models under the strain of competition. And in that sense, the event succeeded in exposing flaws in the Lark's engineering, as its chances of victory were derailed each year by either brake problems, collapsed wheels, or a combination of both. Joe, the fact that the local Studebaker importer supplied Larks for the Victorian Police Motorsports Club to race in the Great Race speaks volumes about this car's credentials. Was there a period of time there where the Studebaker Lark was considered the high-performance king of the Aussie roads?
Well, you have to remember the first V8 Chevrolet didn't arrive till 1960 in this country. There was a tank Fairlane, which was a much bigger and heavier car. Sure, it had a bigger V8, but it didn't like turning corners very much. The Studebaker V8 was sort of like when the Valiant V8 and the Falcon V8 arrived.
Yeah.
Compact car with a V8 in it that gave it a better power to weight ratio. It was a bit more nimble than what we'd seen before. So it was a bit of a benchmark. It was a whole new class of car, and naturally you'd take it racing.
Yeah, made sense, didn't it? The closest that Studebaker came to winning the Great Race outright was in 1962. The last year, the 500-mile classic was held at the crumbling Phillip Island track. An ex-police car entered by the Victoria Police Motorsports Club and driven by two serving police constables was, according to the official lap charts, comfortably leading its class and almost a lap ahead of the Bob Jane Harry Firth Falcon when the checkered flag fell after more than 8 gruelling hours of racing. However, a post-race recount awarded the outright win to Ford. Studebaker fans saw another golden opportunity to win the Great Race slip through their fingers at Bathurst in 1964. The powerful Lark Cruiser, shared by Warren Weldon and Studebaker dealer Bert Needham, had been the fastest car down Conrod Straight and was well in contention for not only a class victory, but also outright honours with an hour to go. Sadly, its right front wheel suddenly collapsed on top of the mountain after the rim just tore away from the wheel centre. Weldon managed to limp the crippled car back down the mountain to the pits, where an agonisingly long stop to change wheels dropped him out of winning contention. Hope you're enjoying Shannon's Club TV. Why not join the Shannon's Club and share your passion for unique, rare and classic cars and motorbikes with other enthusiasts across the country. Keep up to date with the latest news, events and exclusive offers from Shannon.
Hello, my name is Ivor Lewis. We're talking about my Studebaker Lark 1961 Lark Cruiser. Well, the Cruiser is a designation where the vehicles were made 4 inches longer in the wheelbase than the standard Lark. Well, I bought it in 1974 from a deceased estate. It was grey in colour, but most of the colour had been polished off, and I've had it reducated in 1982, and this is what you see. After all those years, it's still as good as when the man first painted it. It's been good to us. We've crossed the Nullarbor twice in it and back. It's been up as far north as Brisbane. It's been Adelaide twice, Hobart, and Tasmania. So it's been good in that sense. I have 4 daughters of my own, and 2 of them have used it at weddings. We now have one coming up this coming month of one of my granddaughters, the first of the granddaughters to be married. So the car's used for family weddings, I guess. Luckily, they don't require a lot of maintenance, and they're fairly easy to fix. But I've had no trouble. It's been basically trouble-free in 100,000 miles that I've done in it. But it's comfortable to ride in. It'll cruise all day long at 70 mile an hour and with no trouble at all. So it's comfortable. Yeah, there's lots of room in it. So I guess it's been 10 or 12 years with Shannon's. I have this car, and I have a Volvo at home also insured with them, and they've been good to us. There's no doubt about that. Just to say, it's always been a pride to own the old thing, and no matter where you go, people like you look at it and say, oh, what is it and where's it go and who makes them? I've had young people say, oh, who makes them, Ford or Holden? Well, you've got to put them right, of course. They're not quite Ford or Holden anymore, and it's been good to me, and it's been hopefully a few more years to go yet.
And now Shannon's National Auctions Manager, Chris Borrobin, joins us. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Joe. Right.
Chris, the Studebaker Lark, great car, but compared to some of the other Studebaker models that come across, the auction blocks there, the Lark seems to be a little bit below the radar. Would that be right?
Yeah, it is a little bit below. I mean, it's got a following, I think, probably more from a club scene perspective. I think a car that people relate with, that they would have seen in their day, so probably more nostalgic, really. And again, we had them as police cars here in Australia, so I think there's a lot of people relating to those. But a very good entry point car. I mean, very affordable car today.
Chris, the whole Studebaker situation is an interesting one. We have good prices for early Studebakers, we have good prices for Hawks, yet the Lark always sits there, and it stays with the big American cars, the mainstream ones, but it always stays just under. Is that the fate of the car? Is that what's going to happen with the Lark, do you think?
Yeah, hard one to answer, I think, in long term. But yeah, we have seen it live in the shadows a bit, and I think the understated presentation of a Lark didn't have the bling of the Hawks and some of the other models. So we have seen it. It's an affordable car though, and I think that's probably the good point with it. And it makes for a good family car, being a four-seater.
And there's a very strong club movement. There's a real core of enthusiasts who love that car.
There is, and we've seen a fairly strong core movement here in Australia for the car. So you still see them around, yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us, Chris. And keep in mind, you can keep up to date with all the latest Shannon's auctions news and results on the Shannon's Club website. If you like the historic race images of the Studebaker Lark on the show today, you can find them all at autopix.com.au, Australia's most comprehensive motorsport photo archive. Well, Joe, I guess looking back at the Studebaker Lark, if you had to create a car ideal for Australian conditions in 1960, the Lark would be a pretty much close to ideal blueprint, wouldn't it?
Well, you're right. It followed very closely the priorities of the Holden, which of course dominated the market, over 50%. And the Studebaker added just enough of what some people needed, extra width so that you could seat 6 people, 6 full-size adults. And it had the V8 engine and it had the full chassis. So if you had to tow something heavy, which a lot of people did in those days, big caravans, big boats, big trailer full of sheep to the market, the Studebaker had that extra margin for hard work.
Became a bit of a trendsetter.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed revisiting where the compact V8 action started in Australia. And we'll catch you next time on Shannon's Club TV.